Enough is enough. When it comes to this, it's the last resort.
With those words, my husband rushed out of the living room, and to my surprise, he began making a phone call from the landline phone in the hallway. I'm sure he's talking to either his mother-in-law or sister-in-law. As expected, after about an hour, it seems the call ended, and my husband returned to the living room, looking relieved. I wonder if he found a solution or...
Starting next month, my mother will be living with us. You have no say in rejecting this, he declared.
Next month?
Yeah, my mother has lunch plans with her local friends until the end of this month, so it seems the move-in will happen after that.
My opinion was completely ignored regarding my mother-in-law moving in. Moreover, there is one significant issue that cannot be ignored when it comes to the idea of my mother-in-law living with us. Right now, your mother and your sister are living together in your parents' house, aren't they? What will she do?
Oh, yeah. She'll probably come along with Mom. Well, take care of her, okay? I think of her as my sweet little sister.
It seems that my husband hasn't taken any of my burdens or opinions into consideration. From my point of view, I would say, are you kidding me? But I don't think he will listen to me. I suppose, if they're moving next month, we need to start preparing. When I said that, my husband smiled happily.
I see, you're finally listening to me, your husband. That's great, that's great. Now we can get along well with Mom and everyone.
I smiled gently. By next month, it's likely that my husband and I won't see each other anymore. I don't think anyone, not my husband, mother-in-law, or sister-in-law, has given the situation a single thought. My only regret is that I will not be able to see the looks on my husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law's faces next month when they face the consequences of their actions. My name is Ruby. I am 35 years old and live with my husband in a 5-bedroom apartment. When we got married, we chose this apartment with the intention of having children after some time. Unfortunately, 6 years into our marriage, we still don't have any kids. The reason for this is that ever since we got married, my job has been demanding, and it seems like my husband Henry has developed an inferiority complex because I earn more than him, leading him to make sarcastic remarks towards me every time I decline something.
Whatever, you would have been fine with anyone, right, Ruby? I just happened to have an arranged meeting with you, so that's why we got married, right?
He used to say these things at the beginning. That's not true. At first, because it was an arranged meeting, I was thinking of declining if we didn't get along. But it was because it was you that I decided to pursue a relationship. I used to reassure him, affirming my choice was him, but he kept seeking attention by repeating the same things, and I eventually grew wary for constantly doing so. Did Henry somehow sense my daily emotional struggles?
Ruby, you don't really care about me, do you? I'll go to a woman who appreciates me.
With those words, he started going to gentlemen's clubs, of all things. I can't help but think now that it would have been easier if he had just cheated on me with another woman. Then we could have broken up quickly. As Henry began frequenting gentlemen's clubs, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Rachel, started coming over to our apartment. Henry probably called my mother-in-law and Rachel over to avoid being alone with me and getting questioned about his frequent visits to the gentlemen's clubs. And both my mother-in-law and Rachel have strong personalities. Ruby, it's been 6 years since you got married, and you still haven't had any children? Could it be that you're infertile? Not hitting the mark, huh? And my sister-in-law Rachel speaks in a way that seems like she left the word tact back in her mother's womb, and her own mother, my mother-in-law, doesn't even try to stop her from speaking like that. That's absolutely true. I've said so many times that I want to see my grandchild's face. Could it be that you're intentionally keeping me from seeing my grandchild? If that's the case, there's no other daughter-in-law as cruel and heartless as you. While saying such things, they give me doubtful glances, as if they are scrutinizing me. Whenever my mother-in-law and Rachel came to our house, I am always prohibited from going out. When it comes to going out to buy dinner ingredients, Henry, who never lends a hand, suddenly said,
I'll go buy the ingredients.
Saying that, he snatches my tote bag and wallet from me and heads out. Consequently, the ones left at home are me, my mother-in-law, and Rachel. Once it gets like that, neither my mother-in-law nor Rachel will stop. Hey maid! The tea is lukewarm, isn't it? You know I always tell you to keep it hot, right? Rachel, my sister-in-law, treats me completely like a maid. I thought my mother-in-law, Rachel's mother, would stop her daughter, but hold on, Rachel. If Ruby is considered a maid, then wouldn't we have to pay her? She started saying something slightly off topic. Moreover, it seems like that conversation is still ongoing. Since we're not paying her money, maybe we should just call her a slave. It took a completely unexpected direction. While being treated like a servant was not something I experienced often, being treated like a slave was a first in my life. I never imagined my mother-in-law would see me that way. However, if I go against them, both of them start yelling at me. As both my sister-in-law and mother-in-law can't stop talking when they get heated, I want to act according to their wishes and settle things peacefully. If I confront them here, and they both get angry, I won't have any rest today. In the end, I couldn't bring myself to address the outrageous slave comment with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but it appears that they have firmly established the perception of me as a slave. Do the two of them have nothing better to do? Every time they have a day off, they come over to my house and make me cook and do the laundry, completely taking advantage of me. By the way, when I told Henry, my husband, about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's behavior,
Mom says she wants a daughter-in-law. And Rachel also says she wants an older sister. Both of them are relying on you, Ruby. Even I am always relying on you, Ruby. Just be a little kinder to me, my mother, and Rachel.
I believe I've been treating him with kindness enough, but it seems that Henry wasn't aware of how much I've been putting up with. No, it's not like that. It's not about seeking affection or anything like that. Even when I tried to explain,
Since you're an only child, having a sister-like figure might make you happy, right? I don't think you have anything to complain about,
he said, and as I tried to explain in detail about my mother-in-law and Rachel's behavior and words, Henry's forehead furrowed more and more. I think the worst is Henry, who goes out of his way to invite my mother-in-law and Rachel home for the holidays, and after leaving me with the two of them, runs away from home. Because if Henry runs away, both my mother-in-law and Rachel will realize that Henry is not on my side. I have gradually came to dislike his family. If my father-in-law was here, things might have been different, but he divorced my mother-in-law 3 years ago and returned to his hometown. Even during the times we met face to face, I was impressed by how polite my father-in-law was. I thought that if he were by my mother-in-law's side, he would have advised her against such behavior. But I haven't exchanged contact information with my father-in-law, and more importantly, I'm sure he would just be embarrassed to discuss his ex-wife with me. My parents passed away consecutively 4 years ago, and I never had the chance to discuss anything about my mother-in-law Rachel or Henry with them. My friends have also become estranged since I left the area where I used to live after my marriage to Henry, so we no longer have the opportunity to see each other. With no one to turn to, I was the lone survivor and had to deal with my in-laws. However, this is not the way it should be. I wondered if I could continue to be treated like a slave by my mother-in-law and Rachel, and decided to try to get Henry to understand the situation anyway. I know Henry is dismissing my story out of hand because he thinks blood relatives would never do such a thing, but I think he will not be able to say that when he sees the evidence. I installed surveillance cameras inside the house. On my days off, I kept the voice recorder in the pocket of my clothes and recorded my mother-in-law and Rachel's words. When I checked the recordings, I saw my mother-in-law and Rachel treating me like a slave, and their actions were clearly captured on the screen. I felt there was no other recourse, so I decided to show the footage to Henry. On our days off, Henry often ends up inviting his mother-in-law and Rachel, so on weekdays when he comes back from the gentleman's club, I try to catch him before his shower. I have something important to talk about, I said, trying to hold him back. Despite looking a bit bothered, he sat down in the living room instead of heading straight to the bath and listened to what I had to say. I opened my laptop and showed Henry a scene where my mother-in-law and Rachel were captured together, treating me like a slave in one of the recordings I had taken prior. Henry, when you bring your mother and Rachel to our house, and then it's just the three of us when you leave the house, right? And during that time, they treat me like this. Indeed, even Henry would surely understand that something is amiss with my mother-in-law and Rachel, despite being blood relatives when he sees this situation. I used to believe that. However, Henry values his mother and Rachel much more than I had imagined, and in contrast, I was completely unimportant to him.
Huh? You went as far as recording something like this? It's a violation of privacy, you know. I never thought you'd be such an unreasonable person, Ruby, to treat my beloved mother and sister like that.
When I heard those words, it felt like a punch to the gut. This person doesn't seem to care at all, even when he sees his own family treating his wife like a slave. What's more, Henry said that even my attempts to make him understand by recording video and audio were unreasonable. Is it good to treat people as slaves and evil to act to protect oneself? No. In Henry's mind, what my mother-in-law and Rachel do is good, and everything I, his wife, do is bad. I had hoped he would understand and be on my side, so I tried to remain rational when his mother and Rachel belittled me or made snide remarks, treating me like a slave. However, I had hoped that if Henry knew the whole truth, he would be on my side. Despite everything, we are married and supposed to have a relationship as husband and wife, so he and I should be supporting each other. However, Henry never helps me with anything, avoids me in our daily life, and I've somehow given up on having children as I endure the daily bullying from his family. Is this what my married life is supposed to be like? There's no excuse for it. Enough is enough. What your mother and sister are doing is just plain awful, you know. I've reached the limit of my patience. You should know the difference between right and wrong, shouldn't you? You're an adult, for goodness sake. That's right. As an adult, one should rationally assess the situation when presented with evidence and decide what to do. However, Henry doesn't even listen to my pleas.
You're the worst. How dare you speak about my mother and sister like that? I didn't even like you to begin with. After this, I've come to hate you. I never knew you could be so malicious.
He shouted angrily. I was dumbfounded. Is this person really an adult like me? Is he really a man who has a family? I don't mean to say that just because he's a man. He should support the family or be more responsible. In the end, what was I to Henry? Housekeeper? Roommate? Or maybe a slave? As I was lost in thought contemplating these possibilities.
Enough is enough. When it comes to this, it's the last resort,
Henry suddenly said and went to the hallway. In the hallway, there was a landline phone, and Henry made a call to someone. After that, he talked for about an hour. After a while, I regained my composure, closed the laptop, and went into my room to start packing my belongings. After about an hour, feeling tired, I decided to go back to the living room to have some tea. When I returned, it seemed that Henry had finished the phone call and came back to the living room. And then,
starting next month, my mother and I will be living together. You have no say in this,
he declared loudly. Starting next month?
Yeah, my mother has lunch plans with her local friends until the end of this month, so it seems the move-in will happen after that.
My opinion was completely disregarded when it came to my mother-in-law moving in. Moreover, there's one unavoidable issue that arises when discussing my mother-in-law moving in. Right now, your mother and sister are living together at your parents' house, aren't they? What about your sister?
Oh, that's right. She'll probably come with my mother. We'll take care of her for me. I see her as a sweet little sister, you know?
I suppose. If she's moving in next month, we need to prepare, right? When I said that, my husband smiled happily.
Finally, you're starting to listen to me as your husband. That's great, that's great. Now we can all get along with my mother and sister.
It seems like Henry has completely forgotten about our earlier conversation. Does he really think that I would accept his mother and sister with a smile after I denounced their behavior? If that's the case, then Henry must be living in a fantasy world. The reason I'm not angry and so easily agreed to their cohabitation is because I don't care anymore. Because you know what? I've lost all interest in dealing with Henry. What's the point of being a couple? What's the point of being a family? I will not stay in an environment where I am the only one who has to bear the burden. Henry has been going to the gentlemen's clubs even more often than before since he heard that my mother-in-law and Rachel would live with us. He probably thought that once they start living together, he won't have as much time to go to the gentlemen's clubs. Thanks to that, I haven't been observed by Henry, which is a relief. I first sorted out my belongings in my room and then started organizing the furniture in the house. Henry finally noticed when things like the sofa in the living room were gone.
What happened to the sofa?
He asked, but I just gave him an indifferent look and didn't say anything. Having more space in the room is better, right? And besides, that sofa was a two-seater. Upon hearing this, he smiled and Henry said,
You're right. If me, Mom, and Rachel sit together, a three-seater would be better.
Upon hearing that, he quickly agreed about the sofa being gone. From his actions, it seems like I don't have a place in their lives. Even if we watch TV together, I won't be allowed to sit on the sofa anyway. Can I even call this kind of relationship a family? No, it seems like I'm not even considered family to my husband Henry. Well, I don't care about Henry anymore. Whenever he seemed to be catching on to something, I would just say something vague to brush it off. It seemed like Henry had never really thought things through on his own before, as he believed my words and thought that I genuinely accepted his mother and Rachel. And then, the next month came.
I'm going to help Mom and Rachel with the moving preparations. I'll be moving over there for a while.
With that, Henry headed to his parents' house, where his mother and Rachel were. This is perfect timing. While Henry was away, I quickly arranged for a moving company and had all my belongings, furniture, and appliances, except for Henry's items, transported to my new place. Except for Henry's room, the house was empty like a shell. Feeling a sense of accomplishment after seeing the tidy rooms, I left the apartment. 3 days later, I noticed numerous missed calls from my mother-in-law and Rachel, who seemed to have finally checked on the condition of the apartment. I didn't notice because I was at work. Henry not calling me meant that the emptied house left him stunned, feeling useless. Anyway, when I answered the phone, my mother-in-law was on the other end.
Hey you! Slave! What on earth is going on? We were supposed to move in, didn't you hear it from Henry? What's with this harassment?
Now following my mother-in-law, who no longer even called me by my name, my sister-in-law Rachel also started shouting into the phone.
What on earth is going on? There's nothing left except for my brother's belongings. No fridge, no washing machine, no TV, nothing. How are we supposed to live here?
If there's no furniture or appliances, I thought they could just buy them. But if Henry and the others actually end up buying new ones, that would be troublesome too. That's because the rental contract for that apartment expires at the end of the month. So even if they buy new furniture and appliances, they'll have to leave soon anyway. Moving is easier with less stuff, right? However, I didn't say anything. By that point, I was incredibly reluctant to talk to my mother-in-law, Rachel, or Henry. Why should I have to explain everything to them from 1 to 10 when they seem oblivious to their own situation? Besides, I have no intention of giving advice or helping them with their current predicament. After all, I've been treated like a slave by my mother-in-law, and Rachel and Henry has consistently disregarded my feelings and sided with them, completely eroding my trust in him. As my mother-in-law and Rachel continued to berate me on the phone, I found myself growing more unsettled than angry. With nervous tension, my mother-in-law stammered.
Ruby, the house is completely empty.
However, I had no intention of responding to her words. Feeling that there was no point in continuing the phone call, I ended it. Then I proceeded to block my mother-in-law Rachel and Henry's contacts and went to consult with a lawyer. Of course, the purpose of the consultation was about divorce. I wanted to seek compensation for the emotional scars I had endured until now. Additionally, my mother-in-law and Rachel are probably unaware, but before Henry helped them with their move, he used to frequent certain gentlemen's club. He would say things like,
I don't think I'll be coming here anymore, so I'll splurge.
said things like that and even used my credit card and dipped into my savings from my single days. So I thought about asking for reimbursement for that as well. Exactly, the money I had before marriage isn't something we share as a couple. And even if it wasn't my savings from that time, him using our joint savings for the gentleman's club is a major betrayal. I no longer had any intention of exchanging words with Henry, my mother-in-law, or Rachel. So I told them that if they had anything to say, they could go through the lawyer I hired. Then Henry thought that if he did not divorce me, he would not have to pay back the money.
I now realize it was wrong not to listen to you all this time. So come back.
Through the lawyer, he conveyed the message, and it seemed like my mother-in-law and Rachel believed that if Henry and I reconciled and returned to the way we were, they could continue living in the apartment since it was in my name.
Stop running away from home like that. Just because something unpleasant happened doesn't mean you should leave the house. Come back home right now.
That's what they said, with confusion in his eyes.
It seems like they don't understand their own position.
The lawyer sighed with dismay. Even at this point, I had no intention of yielding to the three clueless fools who couldn't grasp their own situation, so I proceeded to demand compensation from Henry. I told Henry to pay me in one lump sum because I don't think he will continue to pay me in installments. I told him that I would tell the company if he was too stubborn to pay, and he cried and turned to his own father for help. It seems that my father-in-law, who got tired of my mother-in-law and Rachel's nasty personalities, said,
"You guys really never grow up. I'll pay, but we'll call this a loan. If the payments get delayed, I'll have you work under one of my acquaintances, and your salary will be directly transferred to me,"
he said, paying the compensation fees on their behalf, it seems. In order to avoid causing further trouble to people around them with their nonsense, my mother-in-law and Rachel seem to have decided to seek help and stay at an acquaintance's convent. If Henry keeps going like that, he might end up in a similar situation as my mother-in-law and Rachel, seeking refuge at a convent. As for me, about a year after divorcing Henry, I started going out for meals with a colleague I worked on a project with. We've been getting along well, and I hope things won't turn out like they did with Henry.